Welcome, my political friends of the interwebs. I'm going to do something that I have never, ever in my entire life. Well, I shouldn't say that. I really don't know this to be true, but I don't believe I've ever cleaned a magazine before. I made mention of that a couple, 3 years ago on my Mad Bad Voodoo channel. And so one of my subscribers sent me this Clean Bore Mag Brush magazine cleaning tool. And as you can tell, it's never been out of the package. Not that I didn't appreciate the dude sending it to me. It's just, I don't know. I guess it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And I just was never one to clean my magazines. But I thought I'd give it a shot. But before I start, I want to show you guys something. This is Frog Lube, CLP, Clean, Lubricate, Protect. It's been out in my garage all day. And this stuff, which is awesome, this paste, is no longer paste-like. So moral of that story is don't leave that stuff out in the garage when it's freaking, hot as hell out. But I'm not going to use this on my magazines anyway. I'm not really sure what I'm going to use, but it will not be this stuff or this stuff. Let me think. What am I going to use? By the way, this will be a political video. I have got to clean my damn shit up. I got crap everywhere. Where's my ballast? Oh, there's my ballast. I think I used the ballast. I think. I should probably, if I'm going to use that brush, I probably should have, well, I don't know. Anyway, listen, this is going to be a political video. No kidding. You know what? Here's a good way to start it. I swear to God, I think on my feet. I think on my feet. These magazines are for a 6 hour P228 in chambered in 9mm, and it is a very old, well, I'm not sure how old, but old enough, West German manufactured firearm. Now, I realize that I have a fair amount of younger viewers. They probably have no freaking clue what I just said. Because, most of them were probably victimized by the public education system. And, and if they've graduated high school in the last, 20 years, there's a good chance that they don't even know what the hell, East and West Germany was. Yeah, and that's the sad truth of it. It really is. That's the sad truth of it. And somehow I'm going to segue this into talking about Detroit. So if you're a big fan of the Motor City, hang tight. This is an interesting magazine because this is what the East Germans did. Oh, by the way, and I mean not to make this a history lesson because I do realize a lot of my subscribers do know what East and West Germany is. But for those that don't, after World War II, the Allied powers basically had a fracture, the Soviet Union and the West for the most part. And Stalin took advantage of a lot of things, including the fact that our president was dying, and well, that he did die, and Truman was fairly new to the job. There was a lot of things that went down that were, well, let's just put it this way, we got fucked. We did. But we did it to ourselves, which is par for the course. Bottom line, we split Eastern Europe with Western Europe, and so countries like Germany were split right smack down in the middle, and that was, I guess, a little more complicated than that. But so you had Eastern Bloc countries, like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania. Those were all Eastern Bloc countries, and all became part of the Soviet Union, including East Germany was part of the Soviet Union. And everything outside of that was Western powers, and were for the most part NATO countries, but they were democracies. And they ran themselves. They weren't part of that evil empire, as Ronald Reagan referred to them as, the Soviets. So anyway, it's sad that there are a lot of young people today that have just absolutely no clue. And that's by design. We've talked about this before. That's by design because the powers that be in this country are literally trying to make this country into a communist paradise. They're going to start with socialist paradise, but as anybody who's ever read the Communist Manifesto, which I have, Marx and Engels, for the most part, the theory was that there were stepping stones to full-blown communism, and of course socialism was. And that's why when you hear people say socialism is a slippery slope to communism, that's exactly what it says in the Communist Manifesto. For the most part, it doesn't call it a slippery slope. It says it's a necessary step in the direction of full-blown communism. So, having said all that, listen, my older viewers understand, but the younger ones, God help you. I really say, But anyway, this is interesting because this magazine says Sig Arms, Sig Arms Inc. And what's interesting, it says protected by law, or protected law enforcement and government use only. So this 228s, which I don't, it's in my range bag, or I drag it out. But the 228 was basically a law enforcement gun. In fact, the gun that I have was a range gun for I want to say the Toledo Police Department. I may be wrong about that. Back when they used to carry 9mm. So their first duty weapons when they transitioned from revolver to semi-autos were 9mm, 6. I don't know what they use now, but I'm pretty sure they're 40 cals. But all right. So having said all that, let's break one of these bad boys apart. 'Cause like I said, I've never actually cleaned a mag. I do need to find some cleaning solution. So I'll talk about Detroit for a minute. Here's some hoppies. I'm gonna use this instead of the Battle Star because the Battle Star's stalls low. Detroit. My cousin called me last night. He goes, "Your Detroit filed bankruptcy?" I go, "Detroit's a stinking rotting corpse. Who cares?" I mean, you know, and I hate to put it like that, but it's true. Listen, I worked out of Detroit. I live an hour south of Detroit. And Detroit is a stinking, rotting corpse. Now, I've never taken a magazine like this apart, so bear with me. Okay. Well, that is easy enough. You have to follow her. Probably should clean that up. Because it looks kind of filthy. Probably, I don't know that it's ever been cleaned. So let's do this. Let's get some hoppies down in there. And we'll let that ferment for a while, see what we got. So anyway, so yeah, Detroit filed bankruptcy, no big shock. I guess a lot of the people there are a little peeved because, you know, they voted for Brock and they thought for sure he was going to give them a little bailout. Could you guys even see that? I'm way off camera, aren't I? I'm an idiot. They thought for sure that Brock was going to give them a bailout, and apparently that wasn't something that he was interested in doing. You know, it's funny because I've always said this. If you want to see, honestly, what the end results of the Democrats' plan is, you know, socialism and big labor unions, all you have to do is look at Detroit. Detroit is exact. You know, listen, socialism, the Democratic Party, literally is like a parasite. And honestly, they infected Detroit. And Detroit, for the most part, became the host for the parasite. And given enough time, the parasite did what parasites do, which is kill the host. You know, kill the host. So when you're talking about, you know, socialism and whatnot, I need you guys to understand, honestly, you just need to look at what the end result's going to be, because this is not going to be pretty. In fact, it's going to be very destructive, and at some point will kill the host. And that's the thing. You know, it's funny because for the longest time, the labor unions had literally, I mean, not figuratively, but literally ran Detroit. They did. They ran Detroit. All the elected officials were nothing more than puppets for the labor unions. And in order to get elected in Detroit, you had to kowtow to the labor unions. The best thing that Michigan did for itself, I don't. It's going to take some time to straighten things out, but best thing they ever did was vote to become a right-to-work state. You know, most of the Michigan residents, you know, people that were close, you know, the ones that weren't on the government dole, most of those people understood exactly what the deal was because they watched it happen. You know, now having said that, when I say most of the people, I guess that's not necessarily true. Most of the people in Michigan that lived outside of Detroit proper understood and watched what happened in Detroit. They did. They watched what happened in Detroit. You know, I should probably use that brush. What do you think? Since, you know, since why not? So yeah, now that Detroit's a right-to-work state, they might have a shot at coming back, but, you know, it's funny because, you know, Detroit, I know I've told this before, but I got a lot of new stuff, so I'll tell it again. I had a friend who got married in New Orleans shortly after Katrina. You know, and you'd be like, well, why would somebody get married shortly after Katrina? Well, it was, you know, weddings are things you plan a year in advance. So, anyway, here's the funny thing. I go down there, and I wanted to go check out the lower 9th Ward, which I did. I mean, I drove through the lower 9th Ward. And what came to mind, believe it or not, was that it reminded me of Detroit. In fact, I used to tell people when they would ask me what the lower Ninth Ward looked like. I mean, people up in where I live, and I said to them, look, it's Detroit. Basically Detroit with water. I mean it's sad but true. I mean you roll through neighborhoods in Detroit and it looks just like the lower Ninth Ward in New Orleans, and except the natural disaster. Wasn't a natural disaster that hit Detroit. That was a man-made disaster caused by the labor unions and the Democratic Party. I mean, it's really the truth of it all. So what happens with Detroit now? I tell you, like I said, I mean, they have a shot with this right-to-work situation, but it's going to be hard. Detroit's got a lot of problems. I mean, when I used to work there, I used to make the drive from Toledo to Detroit, and when I used to work there, when you would come into Detroit, literally, and I'm not kidding you, this is not figurative. I mean, literally, you would just get depressed. I'm not kidding. You would get depressed. The minute you got off the highway and started heading into Detroit, it was like, oh my God, it's like a third world country. It was depressing. It's a depressing place. And Detroit of the 40s and 50s. It was considered America's most cosmopolitan city. Now it's just vacant building after vacant building. I'm talking vacant. I'm talking skyscrapers that have literally been vacant for God knows how long. Long time. And, I mean, it's just sad. The whole thing is just really, really sad. But, like I said, it's exactly what you get from the Democratic Party. Exactly what you get from liberalism, exactly what you get from labor unions, And I know my buddy Van's watching this going, but you know what, Van, you don't trust me when I tell you, come to Detroit. Come spend a weekend with me, brother. We'll hang out, we'll drink some beers, we'll shoot some guns, and I'm going to take you up to Detroit and show you what your brothers have done. Show you what your brothers have done. It's the thing, it's crazy, but... I still belong to, I'm a life member of the UTU, United Transportation Union, because I was a conductor for Amtrak. And, I got to be honest with you, I got all the propaganda. I heard it all the time. I worked Detroit to Chicago, for a long time I worked Detroit to Chicago. Hell, for a while there, I lived in Chicago. When I first got on the road, I lived in Chicago. For those of you who are brand spanking new, don't believe me? All aboard. All aboard. So we would get all that stuff. We would get all the propaganda from the union, and between the the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, and the United Transportation Union, and I don't know, in Chicago I think they had about a half a dozen people with their hand in the till. But I've seen it. The thing of it is, they're all about. I hate to say this, but they foster a relationship between labor, or the working man, I should say, and the company that is a toxic thing. It is toxic because you've got labor unions convincing their people that if not for them, the company would eat their children. Would have them living under a bridge and working for slave labor wages. Literally. No, in this country, I'm not saying that we don't have a history of that. There was a time when that was the case. It's so funny how the pendulum swings. Because there was a time in this country where we had, child labor abuse. We had slave labor abuse. We had it all. And the unions came in and through a mighty struggle straightened that out. But unfortunately, it's gotten to the point now where the unions do become a parasite. They get a hold of the company. Hostess is a perfect example. Ding dongs, Twinkies. Remember those? I guess they're coming back only because part of the assets that the company had was its ingredients or recipes and all that stuff. Just like if they have the KFC, the Colonel's secret recipe would be up for sale. So, but literally the unions that were representing the workers at Hostess. Are you kidding me? They literally destroyed that company. They literally destroyed it. And then now you'll hear the people, that was the management that did that. No, listen. Even the judge said when the judge was in charge of everything, the judge basically said to the unions, "Look, this is how much you guys can get an hour. This is it. This is what we can pay." And they looked at the judge, they basically said, fuck you, we won't work for that. And the judge, you know, to his credit, said, you know what? You know, all right, this is done. So all those people that were being represented, yeah, they got represented right out of a job. That's exactly what happened. So it just amazes me when I see these labor unions today that are all about hating on the company, wanting to destroy the company. You know, the management's making too much money versus the working man. Really? I mean, you know, I can remember, I'm not going to name any names, but growing up in Toledo, almost all my friends' parents worked for either Jeep or Hydromatic. You know, Hydromatic makes transmissions for General Motors. They worked at any number of the auto manufacturers, AP Parts, you know, endless. And I can remember my one buddy's dad is a welder. I love the guy, dad, like another father to me. But his dad was a welder at Hydromatic, at General Motors Hydromatic plant. And he would laugh at it was a game to those guys, how little work they had to do for so much money. Now, we're talking the mid-'80s. I don't remember now what he made an hour, but it was jaw-dropping. In fact, he used to laugh at it. He would even call it generous motors. You know, but the way the labor situation was at Generous Motors, most of these people were fucking off all day and getting paid a ridiculous amount of money. Now, yeah, your low rungers on the line that didn't have any seniority, they were doing most of the work. But to be honest with you, anybody that had any kind of seniority there, dude, I could tell you story. I'm not going to, but I could tell you story after story after story that I heard firsthand from my friends' parents who worked at these plants. And I mean, everything from having a cooler full of beer in the break room that was, yeah, everybody knew about, including management. It was what it was. You know, it was what it was. And at some point, General Motors had to go bankrupt. And a big part of it, labor can say what they want about how, you know, it's mismanagement by management and blah, 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 blah. The truth of the matter is that their forced legacy onto those companies were staggering and they could no longer compete. That's the fact. And the United States taxpayer had to bail them out. That's a fact. So all those years that these guys were making, you know, $70,000, $80,000 a year back when that was a whole lot of money, you know, I mean, in the end, the taxpayers were paying that because it wasn't sustainable. It just wasn't. You know, I mean, there's always a host of things that go wrong in situations like that. But, oh, my God, I'm at 17 and a half minutes. All right. All right, so you see me clean this. I'll just put it back together. But everybody take care. Hey, let me know in the comments section. Van, brother, kick in. Now, let's hear what you got to say. Union guy. Talk to y'all later. See ya.